Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Jackie Booth Coaching. It's great that you're here, and today I'm going to be talking about leadership mistakes. What are the top ones? Are you guilty of them? How to recognise the signs? And the ones I'm going to share are ones that we probably all made, myself included, many times, but I'm not just talking about managing staff or teams. That's slightly different, and we can be managing staff without actually leading them. They are two very different things, but I'm talking about inspiring and motivating people who are working with you, who are working for you, working alongside you. And leaders aren't just people with followers. Leadership for me is around empowering others to succeed, to reach their true potential, to dream big and achieve the things that they really want to achieve, and sometimes even outstrip you in terms of success. And achieving all of those things means you need a goal, a vision, a dream, something that you're working towards as a leader, even if that's only to be a better leader. So that brings me to the first leadership mistake that I see people make, and that I've been guilty of as well, and that's having a goal and also knowing your reason why. And that refers to goals for yourself as well as your team, your projects, your career, your business. What are you working towards? And not just in the short term, like the end of the season, the end of a project. What about the long term? And I don't mean that horrible woolly question that you get asked at your annual appraisal, but that you never know the answer to, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How many times have I had that trotted out to me when I've had an appraisal with a manager or a boss? And it can be helpful, but without a structure and a really healthy dollop of support to help you visualize it, you'll not know where to start. And you'll end up working towards your department or organization objectives, and you'll drift from one job to the next without really being at the steering wheel and taking charge of the direction of where you're going. And that's what I've done. I kind of worked for one organization for many years. Different projects came up and I thought, oh, I could do that. I'd like to do that. Oh, that sounds interesting. And I'd get promotions. And I didn't really have a clear sense of direction, other than my managers and bosses said, oh, you'd be good at this. And you take on more responsibility. You manage bigger teams, you manage bigger projects, but you don't have a clear sense of direction of exactly where you're going. And it was a bit of a shock then when I got made redundant after many years, because I don't have a plan. This wasn't part of the plan. And even if it was, I don't have contingency. So yeah, having a goal or not having a goal is a big mistake. And the second mistake that I see, which for me I think is probably the biggest, so I should have put it first, but never mind, and that's how you communicate. A lot of managers and leaders are so crap at this, it really makes my blood boil. They just don't listen to what's being said. And that's just the verbal stuff. When it comes to the non-verbals, they're even worse, kind of really don't get me started, because communication is all about listening, and I mean properly listening at level 3 listening. And when I get to the end of the little communication bit, I should have some time to talk about what those 3 levels of listening are, and why they're so important, and where they show up, how we do them. Yeah, I should have some time to talk about that, so hold on for that. But in the meantime, proper listening is actually listening to learn rather than listening to speak. And we all do that. You know what it's like when you're listening to somebody else who's telling a story and it reminds you of a story, and you want to share that story because you think it's funny and you think people will be interested in what you've got to say, and they probably will be, but you're only really then listening for and waiting for a gap in the conversation to kind of interject your story. And that's level 1 listening, where you're only half listening. Or the other one that we do all the time is actually you'll be listening in a meeting or listening to somebody else, and you'll be thinking about what you're going to have for your tea that evening. Oh, what's in the fridge? Excuse me, do you need to pop to the shop? Have you got everything that you need? Oh, should we have a takeaway? And then bam, person stopped speaking, and you realise you weren't really listening to that last bit of what they've said. And on Zoom, it's so easy to really look like listening, but not actually be listening. And I love and loathe Zoom in equal measure. I love it because it keeps you connected, but I loathe it because there's a sense of disconnect there as well. And kind of trying to pay attention when you can't actually meet somebody's eye when you're talking is really draining. So that's communication. And actually thinking about this, when I started thinking about what I wanted to include in this video today, I realized there are a lot of other things that enable really good communication, such as really being present, listening without interruption, listening with empathy, not providing immediate support and advice. And to be honest, there's enough content there for another video, so there will be another video on things that facilitate really good communication, so look out for that. And it'll probably be something along the lines of what facilitates communication for good leadership, or something like that, how to communicate effectively as a leader. I'll have a think about title topics, and if you've got any suggestions, then please do pop them in the comments below and let me know what would be interesting to you around communication, because there's a lot that I could cover that I think would be helpful. Anyway, so that's the second thing. The third thing that I think is a big leadership mistake is a lack of trust. And I mean this in a couple of ways, kind of lack of trust in your team, in your organisation, your boss, most importantly, in yourself. And it can show up in your team. If you don't trust your team, then you don't listen to what they say. You're the one always having the solutions because you don't allow mistakes, and it'd be quicker and easier for you to do it yourself anyway. You micromanage them in that way, and all of those things really inhibit a team that's fully functional and contributes to the work of the team, of the project, whatever it is you're doing. And you just get worn out and frustrated because you're doing it all yourself, and it feels like you're doing it all yourself, and you actually are. So it's not it's not great if you don't trust them. And if you don't trust your boss or your organisation or your director, then there'll be that kind of unspoken contempt that shows up in the way that how you feel about the way that they do things, who they hire, the responsibility that they give to people, how they run projects, how they make decisions. You'll really not trust them, and therefore you'll lose faith, motivation. You'll not want to lead your team. You'll not even really want to lead yourself because you'll not be happy. And that's kind of it's an important part of lack of trust that has a real impact on how you lead. And lack of trust in yourself, probably the biggest, actually. If you don't trust in your abilities, you don't believe that you can do things, you don't believe that you really are a leader that you want to be, you get overwhelmed with self-doubt, and it really reduces your confidence. And it can seem like if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else will either. And it makes you anxious and worried about your performance, about what's going to happen to you. So they're the three mistakes, and I felt, in all fairness, I didn't really want to leave you hanging without what I thought would be kind of very simple little things as solutions. So I'll give you, there's not one solution. There's never one size that fits all. So I'll give you little things that might help with each of the three that you could start putting in place today. So the first one, about having a goal: get a piece of paper, start to write down what you want for your career, for your business, for your life, and then work out your reason why. So, for example, if you want a promotion, think big. What does that look like? What sort of promotion do you want? Do you want it in your organisation? Do you want it in another organisation? Start doing a little bit of research and having a look. If it's with your own business, do you want a bigger turnover? If you work for somebody else, do you want your own business? What are these things that it is that you really want, and start to write them down. And then for each of those, think about the reason why. If you want a promotion, why do you want it? Will it give you more of a challenge? Will it bring more money? Will it mean that you can relocate? You know, why do you want these things? I mean, your reasons are personal, obviously, but it'll start to help you think about where you're going as a leader. The second thing that you can do related to communication is to do with listening, which is the key part of communication. Effective communication is effective listening, as I said, to start really listening to what other people are saying. So, and I talked about the levels of listening. So level 1 listening, I talked about when you're half listening and thinking about what you're having for your tea. Level 2 listening is around listening to non-verbals. Sorry, I was distracted. It started snowing again here. So it's the non-verbals. So when somebody's frowning, you can read their face, you know, or smiling. You can kind of that's a different way of listening. It's a much deeper way of listening. Level 2 listening, you can tell if somebody's crossing their arms, they're kind of resistant to what you're saying. So you're kind of picking up these cues without probably realizing that's what you're doing, but you're feeling, oh, they don't like this, or they do like this, because of what their body is telling you. And the third level of listening is level 3. Very simple, there are only 3. And that's to do with listening to emotions. And you might be thinking, no, I can't hear emotions. How do I listen to emotions? But you can, you feel them. So for example, if you, and we've all done this, you go into a room where somebody's been having an argument and they stop talking the minute you walk in the room, and you can feel it. You can feel the tension. There's that phrase, isn't there? You could cut the atmosphere with a knife. You can feel that emotion in the room, almost as if it's touched you. And it's very tangible. You can't see it, but actually you can feel it. And that's what I mean about feeling emotions that other people have had. You can do it. I mean, for example, when I coach my one-to-one clients, I mostly coach on Zoom if it's their preference, but some prefer to be coached over the phone. So it's just audio. And I can, it means that I drop down to level 3 listening all the way through, which for me as a coach is fantastic because it's really good practice. But you can hear what they're feeling by what they're saying. You can hear it in their voice. You can hear it in the tone of voice. You can hear it by their silence, what they're not saying. You can hear it. You can, you know yourself, if you've been on the phone with somebody that's about to start crying, you can feel it. And that's level 3 listening, and that's listening by kind of hearing what they're saying, seeing what they're doing, and hearing what they feel. And so you're kind of not going to go from 1 to 3 immediately. It's not like 0 to 60 in a Ferrari or something like that. You can start small. So if you are managing a team, working within a team, make the suggestion, and most of your team meetings at the moment, I appreciate, are going to be on Zoom, but you can still do it. Then when somebody finishes speaking, have the agreement that actually there'll be a 10-second silence before the next person speaks. I mean, this is great. It'll give everybody time to kind of digest what's being said, make sure that they understand and have really heard it. And 10 seconds of silence can feel like a really long time when you're not used to it. So you try it after this video. I'm not going to hold 10 seconds now because it is a long time. But to make that suggestion that actually you're going to stop and have listened. And silences can be really uncomfortable, but they can also be really powerful. Because other things will come up after that because you've allowed yourself time to think rather than rushing in. Really good communication practice. And then the third one around trust, if you're thinking about trusting yourself or lack of trust for yourself, that's the real challenge. So because what makes us not believe and not trust in ourselves is ingrained, because you'll have spent years listening to this like negative inner critic that you have in your head, that we all have in our head. That's kind of like a combination of all the negative criticisms that we've ever received from being children. And we always remember the negative when we get feedback. I'm sure all of us can remember something that we were told before we were the age of 10 about some ability that we did or we didn't have when we were in school, usually what we didn't have. And you remember that and you believe that, that you aren't kind of clever enough at a certain thing, or that you're not pretty enough. So for example, as a child, I was never picked to be Mary or Angel in the Christmas nativity, which, you know, hasn't really bothered me that much over the years. But as an impressionable child who was kind of tall, so used to be stood at the back with the boys as a shepherd, and really, you know, wanting the white dress and the tinsel halo, I never got that. And it you know, it kind of like, well, you know, it has to be somebody else because they're small and blonde and cute, and you're not that. So even though, you know, it can screw you up for years, and it didn't, these are the negative impressions that we get from a young child, and we will have all have had those things, and we can start to believe them, that, you know, we're kind of not good enough. And that takes some time to kind of overcome, because that voice in your head can be quite self-sabotaging. There are ways that you can overcome it. Being aware of it is a really good thing. So if things come up for you, think, oh, didn't realize I thought that about myself, or that I'd kind of taken on that criticism that old manager said, or that teacher said, or that even my parents said, you know, kind of things that you'll have heard growing up, and as an adult, that you kind of take on board and believe in the truth. And in the longer term, they can be, you know, really destructive and can stop you doing the things that you actually are really capable of. But it takes practice to overcome those things. And I'd recommend, of course, working with a good coach, whether it's me or not. And, you know, if you want to work with me, then do get in touch. But actually, working with somebody who can help you explore this negativity that you're probably still carrying is, you know, make that commitment to yourself, whoever you work with, that you'll start to dig deep and actually understand some of those things, because that's really important. So they're my top 3 leadership mistakes, a little bit of a solution for some of them. And yeah, I'd be curious, I am curious to know which are the ones that you've been making, where they've cropped up, and is there anything that you've heard today that has made you think, oh yeah, that's absolutely me? Or is there anything that you've heard today and think, oh, I could start doing that, actually, I'll put those in place? So if there are, then please do comment below and let me know that this has been helpful and what you're doing. And I will do a communication video. So as I say, if you've got some suggestions about that, then let me know. But also, to make sure that you don't miss it, do like and subscribe, so that whenever I post a video, you kind of get it. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you next time. But yeah, good luck with overcoming your mistakes.